Rami Khouri, a political columnist and director of global engagement at the American University of Beirut, with whom I have had this conversation many times. Rami, let's just talk about a few issues there. Arguably, Afghanistan is not a problem that was caused by America, but it has been exacerbated by America. And now we are making another pivotal choice. Some people really agree with Biden's choice to pull out of Afghanistan. Some people really worry that the place is going to be sunk deeper into a mess than it is now.
Well, the historical record, which you alluded to in Southeast and Southern Asia, would show us that the Russians, the Americans, the French, the British, the Dutch many years ago have been involved in that area as colonial powers or foreign invaders, and they all eventually left, leaving behind a terrible mess. So the likelihood is that the United States is following in this same pattern and, having to fly out people at the last minute to give them refuge because you're people who helped work with you, which is happening in Afghanistan, is a symbol of that. And the problem is that these foreign invaders and occupiers keep repeating the same mistake, even though they try to claim that they're doing it for the well-being of the people themselves. So we're seeing in Afghanistan a replay of a terrible tradition and legacy, which is now being also played out all over the Middle East.
The one place that I would argue this administration is trying to be proactive in a good way is with Iran, except by pulling out of that Iranian deal, we actually worsened things there. And now Iran's got a yet more hardline president than it had before.
Right, and the sanctions that the U.S. has unilaterally and in some cases multilaterally put on Iran have worsened life conditions for people all over Iran, which leads to various kinds of reactions, both against the United States, but also sometimes against the regime. And we see that in some of the protests in Iran now on water and other issues. But definitely the Iran agreement was a spectacular example of sensible diplomacy, a rational foreign policy, a win-win situation that served the United States, Iran, and the whole world, using legitimate international law mechanisms to define what each side should get. And they achieved it. It took 3-4 years of hard work. So this is a tremendous example of why diplomacy can work, but it can only work when it responds to the legitimate, internationally recognized needs and rights of both parties. And this is happening slowly in Iran. And of course, the Americans had to make huge concessions when they reached that agreement, but they did make those concessions, and the Iranians made concessions. So this is how the U.S. should really study where success can come from. Not only was it a negotiation with the Iranian government, but it also responded to the desires of the vast majority of Iranian people. And this is also completely missing from American foreign policy in the Middle East, dealing with individual leaders, most of whom are dictators, unelected, unaccountable, running their countries into the ground in most cases. If you look at Egypt and many other Arab countries, the U.S. tends to define its relationship with the leader rather than with the interests of the people.
Rami, you used the term just now, legitimate, internationally recognized rights of both parties, something that the Americans do not do with regard to Israel and the Palestinians.
That's right. And this is a fascinating situation now. I'm in my 54th year of reporting now and analyzing Middle Eastern issues in the media and a little bit in academia. And it's fascinating to see that in the last, I would say, 2 years, and particularly in the last 3-4 months, we have started to see a slow but tangible shift in the manner in which American public opinion and the American government slowly deal with the Israel-Palestine conflict and the claims of both sides. Historically, the United States government, as the British government did when it decided to give Palestine to the Zionist movement in 1917, they ignored the existence of the Palestinians or their rights. This is changing. And so we're starting to see a situation where people in the media, in labor unions, in church movements, all across the Western world, recognize more clearly that there has to be a balanced situation that gives the Israelis and the Palestinians their legitimate rights, which is to live in a secure state either one state or two states, whatever they decide, but to live as equal citizens. We've seen this fascinating little footnote in the Biden administration in the last 2 months of a rhetorical shift where they're starting to use the word equal. I mean, they never said that the Palestinians and the Israelis should have equal rights to statehood, security, and sovereignty. You know, in the past, it was always Israel's security above all else, and the Palestinian aspirations, we'll see what we can do to help them. Now Biden is talking about equal rights and security or whatever for both sides. So this is a little indication that there may be a slow shift taking place, which clearly is taking place across society, in universities, labor unions, churches, etc. The media, you see the reporting about the Gaza situation recently in the United States mainstream media. It was quite stunning how suddenly they're paying attention to what is happening in Gaza in terms of Israel's massive attacks against civilians mostly. So, yes, I think if the United States can bring itself with its international allies to address the situation in the same way that they looked at, say, South Africa, which is that all the people there need to have equal rights, and they work out their own constitutional arrangement. This would be a tremendous help.
Rami, always good to see you, sir. Thank you. I knew you had a lot of experience. I didn't know it was 54 years of experience. That would mean that you started reporting at the age of 3, which I'm sure violated some labor laws. But good to see you, my friend. Rami Khouri is the Director of Global Engagement at the American University of Beirut. Remember,